Hey everyone, I'm Schumann. I am a realtor in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota. And in this video, I'm going to just go ahead and touch that third rail and discuss politics. So brace yourselves. I think ignoring this is like ignoring the elephant in the room when we decide not to discuss why people move to or away from Minnesota. So I'm going to give you an overview of recent laws and public policy moves here in Minnesota that will definitely attract some people and undoubtedly is going to repel others. I recently saw two Reddit threads, one for Minneapolis and one for Minnesota, and both were posts asking about how do they move to Minnesota or the Twin Cities, and is it a good idea because the current political climate where these people live is unfriendly to them, and in that case it was Tennessee and Arkansas. This really struck a chord with me because I regularly help people move to Minnesota from the south because nearly everything is south of Minnesota. And I actually know that people move here for all kinds of reasons. I mean, jobs, we have a great economy here, the environment. We are on the globe, so we do have our share of problems related to global warming, but they generally don't include things like water shortages or wildfires. And also people move here because, this is gonna shock you guys, some people actually enjoy winter and snow sports, and a lot of people actually love having 4 distinct seasons, even though, don't tell anyone, but spring only lasts 2 weeks. And also people are very outdoorsy here and they like that lifestyle. We also enjoy having working power grids in all sorts of weather, so sorry, Texas. I had to laugh because the reaction to these posts were really enraged at this idea, stating that the fastest growing states are Texas and Florida, and yep, that's true, but guess what? Both things can be true at the same time. People can be moving to Minnesota and other people can also be moving to Texas and Florida. So the news is filled with one story after another about states regulating things that we've taken for granted for a long time, and also pouring fuel on the fire of some social issues. Some states have taken actions in one direction, and Minnesota has decidedly gone on the opposite path for many of these issues. Minnesota does have a reputation as a progressive state, and Minnesota typically does go for the Democrat in the presidential election, but we also often have Republican governors or one of our state houses controlled by the Republican Party. So the idea that everyone here is liberal is very much incorrect. However, our governor has a 1-member majority in the Minnesota Senate now, and that means that a lot of DFL, Democrat Farmer Labor Party priorities, are getting codified into law. Minnesota also has a reputation as a very homogeneous state compared to others. However, the new crop of lawmakers brought a series of firsts to the Capitol, and those include things like being the first time that both chambers are set to be led by women, the first person of color elected as president of the state Senate, the largest group of people of color to serve in the legislature here, 11 lawmakers who identify as LGBTQ, and a record number of female lawmakers. With the U.S. Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, Minnesota has taken an extra step in reaffirming their commitment to protecting women's healthcare choices. The right to abortion has been reviewed by the Minnesota State Supreme Court and found to be constitutional, but in addition to this, the PRO Act was passed in early 2023 to make sure that the right to reproductive health care here is protected. This bill goes a step further than current law in protecting access to birth control, sterilization, and family planning help, and it would prohibit local governments from imposing additional restrictions on reproductive health care. In addition, the Minnesota House recently passed a bill that would shield women who travel to the state of Minnesota for abortions, as well as their nurses and doctors. It still needs approval from the state Senate and a signature from Governor Tim Walz to become law, but all indications are that that is about to happen. This bill prohibits Minnesota judges from issuing warrants and law enforcement from making arrests of people charged with crimes in other states for accessing reproductive health care here in Minnesota. And the governor may not extradite a person charged with a crime involving reproductive health care either. Okay, LGBTQIA rights. Same-sex marriage is codified into law, not just at the federal level, but also at the state level here in Minnesota. In addition, Governor Tim Walz signed an executive order protecting the rights of LGBTQ people in Minnesota and other states to receive gender-affirming health care. He actually slammed the tide of the other states rolling back transgender rights. We want every Minnesotan to grow up feeling safe, valued, protected, celebrated, and free to exist as their authentic versions of themselves, Walz said. Protecting and supporting access to gender-affirming healthcare is essential to being a welcoming and supportive state. A separate bill banning so-called conversion therapy for LGBTQ children and vulnerable adults won approval in the Minnesota House last month and is awaiting a floor vote in the Senate. And the Minnesota House also just passed what's called a trans refuge bill, which will move on to the Senate and the governor soon. The law would make it so that people who live in states who have banned or restricted gender-affirming care can come to Minnesota to access that care and be protected from the laws that govern their home states. Okay, education and our budget surplus here in Minnesota. We have a surplus of $17.8 billion, and the governor put forward their budget months ahead of schedule, and details still need to be refined, but his budget proposal would do things like fund increases to schools, housing initiatives, and give tax relief. $3 billion more toward pre-K through 12 public schools and college aid, as well as another $1 billion toward housing initiatives, and they have earmarked $3 billion for tax cuts that they said could include things like a direct rebate check, tax credits, property tax relief, and increases to local government aid. The targets also include nearly $670 million to launch a paid family and medical leave program, which would be fueled by new payroll taxes once it is off the ground. And within the last week, the governor signed a law guaranteeing free breakfast and lunch for all school children in the state of Minnesota in PK through 12. All right, climate. Minnesota Democrats have passed a bill for a carbon-free electric grid by 2040, which is directing a speedy energy transition in at least one sector of our state's economy. And marijuana. THC gummies are currently legal, and we are seeing THC-laced beers and seltzers. There is a proposed legalized recreational marijuana bill, which is supported by the governor, who also references millions of dollars in tax revenues that he believes will come as a result of the recreational marijuana law. Medical marijuana is currently legal in Minnesota. All right, anti-discrimination. The Crown Act was just passed and signed into law and provides further racial protections under the Minnesota Human Rights Act by prohibiting discrimination based on natural hair or braids. All right, that's a quick overview, and I think most of that is just 2023 editions. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up, know what to expect. Thanks for watching.